And? To screw it up less next time, although we can't possibly screw it up as badly as the city is screwing this up. And welcome to This Week in Worcester podcast. I'm Tom Marino, host of This Week in Worcester. Editor at This Week in Worcester. I'm the host of this podcast as well. I am here with John Edward Keogh. He is the president of Hollywood Film Group. He is executive producer at Manny J Media. He is a contributor to This Week in Worcester. Hey, John.
Hello, sir.
The first thing on our agenda is some Facebook drama with the podcast. You got to turn down a little bit. I'm getting feedback.
Uh-oh. John's got to turn down his volume. Let's do that. There we go.
So, what's the backstory here? So I wrote a piece last week in our column section where it has nothing to do with the individual, it has to do with the facts of the word said, where I addressed Worcester Police Sergeant and just until recently the Officers Union Vice President, Sergeant Petroni's a Facebook post he made about Sue Mailman, which said that she signed a petition and they gave the petition number, of her signature, to defund the police. That was not the petition. The petition was actually asking the city to stop spending what ended up being, because it didn't listen, it ended up being, several $100,000. It's hard to say because they say they can't, they hire a law firm to do multiple cases, so it's hard to really parse out what they paid their lawyers for this case, the city did. And they were also ordered to pay some lawyers' fees for the plaintiff, as well as a small punitive award for their fight years long with the Telegram and Gazette to keep public records from the public, specifically related to police issues. And so I wrote that. Again, it's not about the person. Tried not to make it personal. It was about the words said that were false, or at best misleading. The only connection to defund was there was a group years ago now, 2020, when this petition was circulated, that was called Defund DBW, and they were the ones that circulated the petition. So that is the only connection, is the group that was for that circulated a petition on another issue, which was public records and the city spending money to fight in court to keep public records from the public. And that is what Sue Mailman and many, many others signed. I think there was, I forget how many it was now. It was like 800 in city and then another few hundred that were outside the city that signed this petition. And so, I don't know, a day later or so, somebody sends me a screenshot because they know that I am blocked from one Steve Quist's Worcester Politics 101 Facebook page. He'll post things, and if you respond and disagree with him, he'll block you. That's kind of his MO. But the post accused flipped my own word on me, so he didn't, use my own words. I described the post as disinformation from Mr. Petroni, from Sergeant Petroni, and Steve flipped it into I was spreading disinformation because Sue Mailman had said some other things. What actually, and it's interesting what she actually said. She said she wasn't for defund, but I do think, but she said something to the effect of, I do think though that we should engage with services outside the police department, and gave some thoughts about what could happen to help police do a better job and get different types of expertise into into their effort. For example, mental health might be one aspect of, so if you're
Mm,
bringing people in from the outside, you definitely have to obviously have to compensate them. And if they're doing the work the police were doing, then that's pretty obvious where the money's going to come from, right?
right.
Uh, and he decided that this was also an example of defund the police, because he wants to take money from the police and give it to somebody else, even though it was really, in my view at least, how I interpreted Sue's post was that he cited was taking some pressure off the police. And this is something I've heard from police officers directly is uh, just send the cops. The mentality to every emergency call, just send the cops. Doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, if somebody's in danger or property is being destroyed or stolen or whatever, that's one thing. But if you're having somebody in a mental health situation or something that isn't necessarily about enforcing the law, well, we just send the cops, right? And we hear all this training the cops get, but constantly sent into situations that, or it's not even, they're sent into such a wide array of different situations that you couldn't possibly train for them all, right? Um, and so then Mr. Quist's scope got turned on to you, who said nothing about this, Mr. Keogh.
Okay, so then,
You take
so
your story away.
in January, me and Mr. Patron got into a little bit of an argument on Steve's page, basically regarding Mr. Patron not being willing to resign after he had done two things. One, he threatened local community activist Jennifer Gaskin on the police union page. Like, he threatened her and was forced to apologize by former city manager Ed Augustus. That was in 2022. And then he doxed a 17-year-old girl at the time, um, during the original Jose Rivera Atel um, campaign, because he didn't realize that the last name Zambrano is a very common Hispanic last name. And so he assumed that because she had that last name, she was related to a guy in Auburn who had killed a police officer, and so then tried to pin Council Hajjaj with this young girl's donation as showing Council Hajjaj as supporting cop killers. Okay, now that was amplified by, at the time, Mr. Wayne Griffin, who is a local Worcester superstar. And so, of course, that there's a bunch of things that if you really want to look at the history of that, you can look at Jose's appearance on Manny's show and Manny get into it with him, and then Wayne Griffin and yada yada. Anyways, long story short, Mr. Patron was forced to apologize again by the current city manager, Eric Batista, who then went on to defend his position on Manny's show, saying, "What do we want to do? We want to fire a police officer every time they make a mistake?" And the answer is no, you don't want to fire them for every mistake. But this was two brutally public mistakes by a leadership person in Mr. Patron. So then we ended up talking about that during January, because somehow Anthony likes to connect this to any time there's any criticism of the police department. He brings up his own personal experience and gets mad. So then Steve Quist took he let Anthony's comments stand on his page, but then he started deleting mine, right? Because Steve loves bad cops. He's a huge proponent of bad cops, loves as many cops who do bad things as possible. That's Mr. Quist's MO. And so he was, deleting my comments. So I texted him, because he and I used to be on the cable television advisory committee together, and we had worked well in that capacity. And so, of course, with Steve, it immediately escalated to threats of physical violence. So I called him a clown. That was in January. So, right, so I did. I said, "You're a clown. It is what it is." So he blocked me from his personal Facebook, from Worcester Politics 101, and then went on to say bad things about me then. Whatever, no big deal. So I completely forgot about it, to be honest with you. So then on Tuesday night, um, uh, you know, the thing that we were at the DOJ response from Chief Saucier, and so Steve texted me that night, 74 days after I called him a clown, and he texted me and he says, "Oh, you want to call me a clown? I'll show you, clown." And then the next day posted my mugshot from my 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 case in 2009 where I went to prison. And so something I've talked about on this show, I've talked about in a bunch of other places. I've talked in front of churches, and I've talked in front of a bunch of reentry groups, and I've done some things, on the behalf of the local government and also the state government. And I've written a series of articles about it in a bunch of different places. I wrote a book um, uh, called The Sense of Purpose. I have some copies if anybody wants to buy my book, just left over. And it's something that's a part of my story, and I find it to be. I don't. I'm not sorry for what happened. Of course I am. I mean, I that's the whole point. I took responsibility. I pled guilty. I made a series of public apologies, and I've done everything I can do to. Oh, Maria wants my book. I've done everything I can to. Do the best I can to move forward. It was also a long time ago. It was 16, almost 17 years ago now. And Steve felt the need to say that anytime you listen to this show now, you have to have that in mind. Of course, if you've been a long time listener of our show or seen on our show, we've discussed this a bunch of times, but Steve doesn't know that because Steve doesn't really engage in anything other than his own opinion. And I feel bad for the guy because I think that, I want anybody to be able to share it, and I don't want to run the guy down. I've probably been a little too sarcastic here tonight, but anyways, I think I think he was mad at you, and then by extension, he's also been mad at me, and this was his opportunity to like show the world, like
So
he was exposing something, and it could be that Mr. Patron and Mr. Cipro got in there and then pushed it a little bit, because they've brought up my case to me many, 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 many times, because they can't get past that. You know what I mean? That's for them is like a big deal. Of course, they make excuses if it happens to be a political person that they like, but if it's someone local, you can't have an opinion about the police if you happen to have a record in their opinion. And I think that I think it actually gives me a unique perspective. And I think that that's why when I say that I'm not anti-police, and then I show it through our discussions and our conversations that I'm focused not on being against the police, but I'm focused on helping the police and the public reform and heal, right? Like and come to a point where we can look at them as heroes. I offer a different perspective than other people, and so I also feel like it helps me communicate with several of the community groups that support Black and Brown folks in our city who have been very much through terrible situations with the police. And so, of course, since my life has had a lot of police connections with it, it allows me to kind of speak to that and to talk about it. And I think if you have a platform to speak about things, you just should. So, I mean, that's really what happened. And of course, the last few days has been comment after comment. Right, that's right. Definitely, they want to punish, and of course, they want to use the social media as a platform to punish. Even though both Mr. Patron in this situation and Mr. Quist have gone on massive tears against cancel culture, their attempt this week, Steve's attempt was to cancel Tom and to cancel me, right? Because don't listen to us because of yada yada, and to cancel Sue. Right, so that's another thing. Let's reduce Sue's ability to speak publicly because she retweeted something, whatever. So you know what I mean. And again, I read the same thing, the post from Sue at the time. I don't know that that she's. I definitely don't think that she's saying, and I take her word for it. I mean, she's explained it multiple times. And the group. I think the group's name at the time, Defund WPD, is unfortunate. It's an unfortunate name, which is probably why this continues to be. Because I don't know that there was ever a chance at all that the police departments across the country were going to be defunded. I don't think that's ever going to be a thing. And I thought at the time that the name was stupid.
yeah,
And
well,
that's
regardless,
my
I mean,
opinion.
Yeah, so, they came from activists on the street, and it was their thing to name, and I think
Yeah.
that the rest of us, largely went along with it because they were the ones in the street. However, um, what at its core, yeah, there's some people that just want to rip money out of the police department arbitrarily. Yeah, I don't think we should do anything arbitrarily. Uh, but it was really around reallocating those funds to things that prevent crime, largely education based, programs, not just the schools that included, but other programs, work program, etc. Right, um, and right, because police respond to crime. There's very little that police can do in their function, not because they're incompetent, just in the function of being a
Mm.
police department. There's very little a police department can do to actually prevent crime. Some
Right.
things they can do, but little. It's mostly go get bad guys when they do bad things is the job. Um, and so the problem with that phrase is that it doesn't have a real definition, and so it's used as a political football. You'll hear it more again this year because we're in election year, and election year is where logic goes to die.
Yep.
So you're gonna hear it more, and maybe Sergeant Petroni's a public person, so I thought it was fair game. I didn't. Well, I think we talked about it here, but I don't think I wrote. If I remember correctly, I don't think I wrote anything about that at the time about
Right.
the Cop Killer Association thing, which is silly on its own right. Like, okay, so the girl's father, if he was right, this is the case was that they weren't related, but let's just say they were hypothetically for a minute. So the girl can't donate to a politician because her father was a bad guy.
Yeah. That was exactly what
What's
they
the
said.
implication? Yeah, it's silly on its face.
But also, it's
Yeah.
not just silly. The thing that really kind of rode the whole thing into real like being badly is that it just showed how really truly ignorant of other people's cultures most people are. And in this case, Mr. Petroni just didn't realize that Zambrano happens to be a very common last name in Hispanic culture.
So I actually think that happened. It came from the lawyer whose name I'm going to forget, Margaret Melican.
Yes.
So I think I believe that the reporting on this was that it started with her. She gave it to Griffin. Griffin posted it on Facebook or whatever, and then Petroni reposted it or whatever, and added from the voter directory, from the campaign finance information, posted the person's address, which is really the problem. And then he actually did the same thing again to a donor to a local super PAC, to a little independent expenditure fund. These are people that they can. These are groups that can advertise on behalf of, advertise in support of or against a candidate, but can't coordinate with the candidate. So they can't give the money directly, but they can spend it on their own advertising, right? And I pointed out that one, the person who donated to the super PAC that Sergeant Petroni doesn't like, because it supported candidates he doesn't like, and that's fine. It raised much less money. Pardon me. And his hook with that is that this person lives in Holden, so he framed it as outside people interfering in our elections. So I pointed out in this piece that the PAC that started basically at the chamber by Tim Murray, called Progress Worcester, is raised entirely more money, lots more money, way more. More in I don't think it started collecting money until July, so it collected more in 6 months than this other PAC has collected in 4 years that it's existed, and also had a higher percentage of its money collected from people who say they live outside the city. So, I don't know if we're headed toward like a election fact checking thing. I've kind of been a little weird about. I don't want to just become a fact checking org, right? But maybe for election we'll do something like that. But it's just kind of irritated me because I've heard this many times before. This talking point about this petition, but they never actually post a petition, which is I did in my piece. It has nothing to do with police funding at all. It has nothing to do with police funding. It has to do with public records.
Yeah, they like to post anybody who signed it or anybody who put I've seen the list, and it's that so then Red Metro Worcester, which is another group. By the way, they changed their name because they posted at me the other day too. I think it's like Red Poly or something now, or there's some weird something to do with they got rid of Metro, and that guy's not from Worcester either. And so that and I won't mention his name because I don't want to give him any credit. I just refuse to give that guy credit. But they did the same thing. They like to just post a screenshot and they zoom in on a person's name who happened to like it or sign that particular petition at the time. And by the way, I mean, let me just talk about this like from an esoteric perspective. I generally don't sign petitions, and I don't donate money at all to any candidate or any PAC because of this, right? There's always like the chance that somewhere down the line someone says something, but also because I think that I have worked in the media for a long time, and I feel like any donations that I make, if I ever become some prominent person in any way, which I doubt, but if it does happen, then no one can say to me, hey, you donated to such and such school committee member in such year, and that person is really bad guy or bad lady or whatever. And so I just have taken it as a personal policy not to donate and not to sign petitions. I do sign anybody's nomination papers for the for running for office. Anybody who wants, I'll sign, and I've done that for many years because I do believe that it's up to the voters, not me, to determine who gets elected or not. You know what I mean? So I really don't want to get in the way of what the voters choose, even if I don't agree with it. You know what I mean? I like whether I agree with the candidate or not. I don't think that matters as much. I think we could talk about like a policy and a position and those kind of things, but going at a person individually, I feel like that's silly. So I just generally sign everybody's papers, and so we'll talk about that in a minute, Freddie.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. And just my last thing on this is, so I do a weekly spot on Talk of Commonwealth with Hank Stoltz every Wednesday morning at 8. If you're up that early, check it out. It's myself, Hank, of course, Ben, his producer, and my friend Mark Henderson, who runs the 016.com. And talk about stories of the week generally. It's half an hour show if you get a chance to listen to it. But at the when I was driving into the show on Wednesday, a caller had texted in. Hank read the text and said something to the effect of, "Hank should get quit." They call him Q on the show. They get Steve and Tom on the air and sort this thing out. And which I didn't realize it had risen to the level of we had to sort it out. But okay. And then Hank didn't mention it. So right at the end of the segment, I just mentioned real quick that I heard what your texter had said, and I wanted to invite Mr. Quist onto the This Weekend with Worcester podcast to have a one-on-one conversation. And the show ended, and I was outside talking with Mark for a minute, and Hank came out to tell me that in no uncertain terms, with multiple uses of curse words, would not be appearing on the show. Right. So, I mean, I offered to have him on. I'll
moderate it. I'll moderate that show for you.
I don't like. I mean, I'll just wait till he stops yelling. And I can wait. Yeah. I'm patient. But he's obviously doesn't want to do that. He wants to have a one-way conversation. He used to do this too with on the Facebook page on for This Weekend Worcester. He got me blocked, so he'd come on, and I can only see the comments in the back end, like as the the operator of the page. But I can't actually see the comments, and I can't respond to them, even with the page account, right? Because I'm blocked, right? And it's still knows obviously that I'm signed in as me operating the page account, right? So so I can't respond. I can't do anything with the comments. So I mean, that's the only reason why he's blocked from This Weekend Worcester page. I welcome people to post there, and sometimes I respond. Or people having if people having a discussion, I might correct a factual error, but I generally don't comment there. But if you come at me, obviously I will, and he was, and I can't even respond to it. So we're not gonna have a one-way conversation. But that's what Steve wants. He doesn't want to have to answer questions or actually consider facts. so he's going to have a one-way conversation with himself over there. You know, you would you'll have a great time over there until he blocks you, which is inevitable because if you disagree with him in anything, you're not welcome there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. And again, I mean, maybe people would think if they came to the show they were going to hear me like run him down or whatever, and I'm not. He just blocked me and then posted about me, and so
Mhm.
I can't respond to it. But it's funny. I just hope he knows that there's like 6,000 people in the city of Worcester that texted me that immediately, screenshot after screenshot after screenshot after screenshot. Like, do you want me to say anything there, John? And and people did. And I think that it probably, if he's fair, and I know he deleted a few people's comments who were supportive. If he's fair, and lets his readers see, both sides of it, then maybe, that post probably doesn't look as good as he hoped it did. And so, I mean, that's really where it comes down to. And if it was try to eliminate, like, I got one message from someone who's like, "Oh, I'm going to tell the mayor," and I was like, "Oh, believe me, the mayor already knows."
Yeah,
uh,
see, that's the thing when you try and be transparent is it's tough to have a gotcha moment.
yeah, it is the gotcha thing. And so, I mean, I guess I mean, I think that there's a sense of people that if you have a record, you're supposed to walk around ashamed all the time and like, constantly like, please allow me to like engage in society. I'm really sorry because of what what did. But I feel like I've done my best to make amends. I served my time. I accepted responsibility. It wasn't someone who didn't accept responsibility. In fact, I have a co-defendant who's still in prison because he didn't accept responsibility. And so, those are the kind of things that happen. There was some inaccuracies in what Steve wrote that are just factually untrue about how the case went down, but I don't know how it helped people for me to like get out a police report and start reading to you like the details. So I mean, if Steve really wants to engage with it, he should just report the truth, but in this case he didn't. um and so that's up to him. It's up to him when he wants to have that conversation. And I'm hopeful that eventually he'll change his mind. And again, because I think anybody with a platform, if Worcester wants to grow and engage, it's definitely not that way. That's not the way to help us change and grow and become a better and a healthier city. That kind of behavior just doesn't lead to any growth. But anyways, I forgive him and I'm moving on. And so we
Yep.
probably went on this way longer than we intended to.
Yes. Yeah, and we probably give him more attention than he's worth.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. If you want to have a one-way conversation, you know where to go.
Sure.
And
We could always go down to the bar and visit him down there.
uh,
He sits in
I,
the same spot. So I mean, it's not like he doesn't. That's his spot, right? So I'll just go talk to him.
yeah, I've kind of tried to keep that on good terms, keep you on good terms with him. And it's just tough if you don't agree with him on everything. He's just going to find a reason. He's going to find a reason. So it is what it is. The invitation remains open. Otherwise, I don't think I'll be talking about that person anytime soon. Next up on some actual stuff that matters, and people that matter. There was a quote special meeting that wasn't really a special meeting at Worcester City Hall this week on Tuesday. You were there. I was there, John. I would venture to say the chief was good and answered some questions. The only, credit to Councilor King, who asked detailed questions, got expansive answers, and was really the only one to do so. Not the only person to ask questions for sure, but the way he went about asking his questions really got more than we have heard from the chief to date on any of this, by far.
And the chief was ready for his questions.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. For sure. Outside of kind of getting losing track of which page he was on there at one point.
Yeah,
other than that, and that's nothing. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you had to nitpick, that's what you'd had to go to, is that he got his pages mixed up for a second. He was great. He was great. And I thought gave, as I said, expansive and detailed answers. You didn't run from the questions. I don't know if You know, pure speculation on my point. Maybe he was happy he was finally getting to talk about some of this stuff.
I felt like he engaged in a way that I don't think we. I think first of all, he definitely felt like the chains were off of him, and I don't know if it's because he's now the official chief, and so he feels a little bit more emboldened. But he expanded on some things that the mayor and the city manager have basically denied, and he openly discussed it. So I thought that was very enlightening for me. Again, and I know there's some people that follow our show and watch our show that wonder why we have been critical of the police, but we're very supportive of this particular chief. And the reason why is because of this. This is, if you've met with him one-on-one, he's been really honest about his wanting and willingness to discuss things. One particular point that stands out is that Councillor King, who's a union organizer in his job, and has been, various positions in the union, and he's a SEIU, right? I forget, 409 or whatever it is. And he's been a part of that, actually asked a question about the union contract. And he specifically asked, is it possible to fire an officer if an officer lies on his police report based on the contract? And that was how he framed the question. And the chief answered very clearly and distinctly, no. So what he said, what that means is, and Tom and I have discussed this, is that a police officer can lie on his police report, and there is no mechanism for that to lead to termination. Not now. But what it can do is it can lead to something that has been discussed in many other places in Massachusetts, which is a list that's called the do not testify list that almost every prosecutor has. These are officers who have been. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's often called the Brady list.
The Brady list. This list is officers who have shown a demonstrated capacity for lying on official documentations and in testimony at court. So often what happens is officer writes something in the report, they go to court, they testify to something different. And that basically really threatens a case. It hasn't done a lot of that because Massachusetts prosecutors still have like a 94% conviction rate. But in the cases of some of the cases that convictions have been overturned or that there have been acquittals, a lot of it, surprisingly, has been because of inconsistencies in officer testimony. So for the first time in Worcester's history, the chief of police, in this case, Chief of Police Paul Saucier, admitted not only one, that there is a list, that the list exists, but there are multiple officers from the Worcester Police Department who are on that list. To me, this is a massive admission. Most people who haven't been following this story probably will think of this as like inside baseball. But the fact that he admitted that there are officers who cannot testify in court is a really big deal. And so that it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not, Fred. The chief admitted it. That's your own problem. So you don't have to believe it, except the chief of police admitted it. And so that's just foolishness. So, but the key component to this list admission is that he also mentioned he can't fire an officer who lies. So that's the chief asking, in my opinion, for a tool to be able to, run the department correctly. And Tom and I, and it doesn't matter what detractors say. Between Tom and I, we probably have, I don't know, a couple hundred officers that we speak to. Maybe combined. And if you add other reporters in the city, if you add Brad, it's probably everyone. But let's just say there's a few hundred officers who will speak almost always off the record, and they consistently have said they do not want to be associated with officers who lie. They do not want to be associated with that. They do not like being associated with that. They don't want to be known for that in any way, shape, or form. So, which I take as evidence that if there was an officer who happened to lie and happened to be on that list and is hurting the police's ability to bring cases, that they would be okay if that person got fired. Now, they cannot be because of the contract. which was a very, very specific question that Counselor King asked, and and the chief of police answered. So it doesn't matter if you don't agree with it. The fact is that the chief very clearly and distinctly answered that question, and I think that is a bold answer on his part, and it makes the both Mayor Petty, Public Safety Chair Kate Toomey, and City Manager Eric Batista and former city manager Ed Augustus look horrible, because all four of them have been asked this question before and have denied any knowledge of it at all. So you're telling me, Tom, let me ask you this, Tom. You're telling me that the chief of police knew about this list, but these four didn't? They've never heard of this list?
Yeah, I'm going to go with no. And I believe the DA's office has admitted that they have a list. You know, they didn't say what department, of course, that covers the whole county, right? So, could be not anyone in this department in theory, but I mean.
But and sure, but that's the thing, is that the DA has said this list exists in the past, but our public safety chair would never acknowledge it. Our mayor has never acknowledged it. Even now, the mayor hasn't acknowledged it. He went on Hank's show the other day. Hank mentioned this list, and Mayor Petty said, I don't know anything about it. I can't really talk about it." So that's the kind of just non-transparent government we have here, which is like, you have the sitting chief of police admit to something that I think is a huge step forward in the healing process of our community, right? He's admitting something that many people have said, right? They've said, hey, there's a group of officers who don't tell the truth. Not every officer, just a group, right? And then they've been told by everybody, Rick Cipro, Anthony Bertrone, Thomas Duffy, all of these people have consistently gone on any public place they could and said, that's not true. Our officers never lie, yada, 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 yada. And even though, like in the beer garden case, we have absolute 100% rock solid proof that not only did the officer lie, that the chief of police at the time had to change the report, and that in the lawsuit, that was the specific reason why they got probable cause, right? So the judge said, I have this report, I have this video, and let probable cause go forward. So, that's the problem again. And no one's saying that we don't, Fred. You know what I mean? That's the thing. This is the answer, that you just don't listen. And no one's saying that we don't have that. That's the thing, is that we're trying to eliminate the problems, and you're just focused on talking about the good ones. We have been unanimous on this show that we support good cops. So Freddie, you're losing my vote for mayor, dude. You're dragging down your campaign's chance.
Yeah, good cops good, bad cops bad. It's that simple. Let's talk a little bit more about kind of what I think we learned on Tuesday. It feels like, if not a majority, surely a very close to a majority of city council has no interest in doing anything on this subject.
No.
They have decided that there's a new person at the top of the food chain, and that will, because he's a better person, and he is, that will miraculously fix everything. And there was no systemic issues, because we're not going to change the system at all. We're just going to put a new guy at the top, basically going to stick a better person at the top of a failed system and hope for the best, because otherwise we'd have to do stuff, and it's election year and we don't want to do stuff. That's what it felt like.
That good person, who, again, I 100% support this chief, asked for tools on Tuesday that will help him do a better job. I think he wants to do a better job. I think he's asking for tools, and he's also not an idiot. He's a very smart dude who's trying to work through Worcester political nonsense and get to the answers that are needed, the tools that are needed. So, my challenge would be to Public Safety Chair Kate Toomey. She said at his inauguration thing that she would have his back. So have his back and get him what he needs, which is either a citizens review board, or an inspector general, as Tom has talked about, something somewhere where there's an independent review of facts in cases that involve dispute. By the way, so let's talk about a case that the chief talked about on Tuesday that I think was very, very important. So this is the Walmart case, and this is the situation where there's an off-duty police officer who's a veteran, who's like a beloved officer in the force, who almost got hit by a car, and in the process of almost getting hit by the car, pulled a guy out of the car, and then pepper sprayed him. And the DOJ wrote this like little 2-line summary that didn't really talk about the case. And so the chief went and figured out which case that was, right? Went out and figured it out because they took the lines and they searched through any case that had anything similar until they could find that case. And then he responded to Counselor King. And I will say, I would say it's unfortunate that Counselor King didn't let him finish. I think that didn't look good on Counselor King, although Counselor Russell didn't cover himself in glory with his point of order. But anyways, it didn't matter. The chief's passion in that moment for a good cop came through very clearly, and he defended that officer, and he said distinctly, the reason why you see so much passion is because this guy was accused falsely. Okay, so in that case, you know what led to that? Civilian oversight. Literally, we have been pushing, not just me and you, Tom, but a bunch of people have been pushing for direct engagement on the issues that have been brought up by the Department of Justice, and not just this version, but multiple versions over the years, going back at least to 2015, and in many cases going back even further. And the chief of police, for the first time, has engaged on that. And so the civilian push, chief of police engages on this particular thing. I think it was great. I thought it was great. That's what you want. You want him to defend an officer who didn't do something wrong, and you want him to show it. Here you go. Here's the information. Here's the evidence. Here's the thing. And I think that was great, Tom. And so again, other people have. It's funny how some people think that like I'm anti-police, and then other people think I'm too for the police. Right? It's hilarious, because I think that what he did in that moment will show you what leadership is needed. You need a chief of police who both admits wrong and admits need for growth and change, which he did. And then you also need a chief of police who defends the police. That's his job. Literally, that's what he's hired to do. He's the buck stops here. And he said that at least, I don't know, probably 25 times during the course of the night, that from now on he's going to do this, and the chief's office is going to do that, and he took responsibility, which we literally have not had for decades in that position. That's all we're saying, and I think that he showed himself really well. And so if you read between the lines, Public Safety Chair Kate Toomey, give him the tools that he's asking for, and he's going to do not only the great job of defending the police, but he's also going to help us move forward by cleaning out some of the stuff that needs to be cleaned out. But he needs the tool to do it, which is independent oversight.
Yeah, what I've said is an independent determination of the facts in police misconduct cases.
Sure.
If that came in the form of inspector general, that would probably be the inspector general for the city, and they would, also work on other issues related to, whatever the jurisdiction would be crafted out as. I see it as, violation of civil or human rights, discrimination, serious stuff. You don't want, like, insubordination isn't something that an inspector general would look at, right? But then, then we have the arbiter of the facts. That person brings forward the facts, yep, and makes a recommendation. And then it's up to, if it's the police department, it's up to the chief or whatever department it might be in. And then it's up to the the leader of that department to make the appropriate decision on discipline. But at least we have a determination of the facts, and we have the discipline decision. And we can have some faith that the facts are at least independently discovered, and, independently reviewed and investigated. And, then if there's a discipline decision we don't like, we can criticize that. But at least there's something to follow here. When you start off with, a community of people, law enforcement officers that call themselves brothers and sisters and family and all of that, right? If I was accused of wrongdoing and you investigated, I have an idea how that might turn out.
You're going down for sure.
Well, okay, you're a bad example because you're a terrible friend. But other people, it's and I don't even mean that in a corrupt way. Can you imagine you are working in internal affairs, you are an investigator of police misconduct, and you have a case where, first of all, you probably set out to find a way to say no. You know, your interest, you already have a bias trying to find a way to say no. And then imagine the pressure just in the environment, in the culture of the police department, in any police department, anywhere, the pressure you might feel to find a way to get to know. This didn't happen.
Right.
That's not how you get to facts. By building bias, by building the facts around people, the facts have to be determined by people with an implicit bias.
Right. No, I'm with it. So the thing that, I've actually over the last couple of days, I've had some conversations with people. One of the things that I've mentioned is that why do you think there's so many CPAs in the country that do really, really well? And the reason being is that small businesses, medium businesses, big businesses, they hire CPAs to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to look at their books from an independent perspective and then certify it so that they can send it to the IRS. And why is that? Well, if you go to the IRS, they actually have a statistical survey that they produce, okay? And then you can actually look at the details of who gets audited and who doesn't. And do you know who gets audited the most, Tom? Small and medium-sized businesses who do not have an independent CPA. So they go and get an independent CPA, they hire them. And in fact, actually right now, Leanne and I, for Hollywood Film Group and for Manny J Media and for Leanne's business, we're actually in the process of meeting with a CPA, hopefully in the next couple of days. And they're going to help us determine like if we're doing our things right, because that is needed to make sure because even though I I look at Leanne as she's impeccable with her books. And I think that I'm trying to do what she's asking me to do, but maybe I made a mistake, or maybe she did, because we're not CPAs. So we need a CPA to tell us, oh, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, not with intention. That's the other thing too. Again, this case, the Walmart case, this officer didn't do anything with bad with intention. He was almost run over by a car and yanked the dude out of the open door while he was falling down and protected himself. He didn't do anything wrong, and that was clearly but the only way we found that out was through a independent determination of the facts, which was caused by civilian review. And so that's all we're saying needs to happen in the cases where there's actual real misconduct. And so I think again too, the only reason we even got to this point, Tom, is because someone released a report that said the officers did this bad thing, and it became, because of the sex stuff, it became a sensational story, and that's why we're even where we're at, right? And so everybody's backs are still up about that, and because of that, it ended up actually doing well for the city of Worcester, because we ended up with a guy who at least has on his mind that he thinks that this is a good idea to like review things. He pushed back on stuff. I mean, it wasn't like he like went for every single thing, and I don't want someone to agree with everything I say. I do want a chief of police who goes, well, I don't agree with that, and here's why. Okay, there you go. I mean, we can disagree, and we can say, well, we think this or we think that, but he is the person making the determination. Okay, that's fine. That's why he got the job. And by the way, he didn't get the job through instant gratification, because there was literally a group of people in the police who fought against his appointment. They sued the city up to the state house to try to stop the civil service thing from happening that allowed him to be promoted, right? And so we're not saying but that's an important thing. We have multiple deputy chiefs who felt like they should have got the job. So we have people competing for this role, and this guy ended up with it through a competition, hard fought one. It went to court, right? So
no, I went to
yeah.
civil service hearing.
Yeah.
Just responding to Mr. Not Mayor-elect. People say police oversight. Just to be clear, chief answers to the city mayor, chief answers to the manager. Manager is essentially the police commissioner. So statutory, the manager is the chief conservator of the police. I mean, no, chief conservator of of justice or of order
Yeah,
of
of the
justice
order.
of the order.
Yeah,
Is that what it is?
I think it's of the
Look at
order.
that! I
I think
screwed it all out. Here I was acting smart and I had it all wrong. Yeah. So nonetheless, he is essentially the manager is essentially the top cop. So that's what it makes me crazy when they say the manager is the oversight. No, he's in the chain of command. That's not oversight. You don't That's management, not oversight. Oversight is a different thing. Oversight comes externally, not
and
internally.
and in this case, we have an actual example this week on Tuesday of the chief of police disagreeing with the city manager and admitting to that Brady list that there's officers in our department that are on the list. So that's a really essential thing. That means that the oversight is denying something that is factual, that if we really wanted to, if someone wanted to, we could sue. And now any defense attorney can use that in a case, right? And say, city manager said this, chief of police said that. Where's where it is, and that now that can open up a ton of work for lawyers, right? And actually, to be honest with you, I think the DA's office should have to do that work anyways. They should have to admit that stuff right away. They used to have to. They were forced at one point to issue the Brady report to every public defender and like defense attorney, but then they changed that rule. They changed that rule under Deval Patrick. By the way, for the Democrats who think that the Democrats are, pro, criminal justice reform, Deval Patrick did not shine in that category at all. But they changed the rule, and so now you have the whoever the defense attorney is has to make a formal request in voir dire. Voir dire is the time before the jury comes in, right? That's with the judge. That's a motion that has to be filed. So if you have an inexperienced defense attorney, it's happened to be that they didn't get the Brady report. The officer got on the stand and testified, and it was brought up in appeal that the officer lied, right? So that led to overturning cases and things like that. We don't want that to happen. You want justice to be served in the actual trial, not like 15 years later where the person went to jail, like we have in the Nat Cosenza case. Dude went to jail for 16 years. Turns out he didn't do it, and then now the city of Worcester has to pay money because there was a critical error made 16 years ago, or even longer, because he's been out. I don't know how long has he been out now, Tom?
A few years now, yeah.
Yeah. So 20 years ago almost, this guy was screwed because there wasn't independent oversight. That's really what it comes down to here. There was no review. There's no internal process to check out these reports. And in this case, they were fabricating evidence and just making shit up against the guy. That's not there's no way to review that independently. This chief is asking for those tools, and I'm just saying we as a community should all want to provide him with the tools that he's asking for. Let's give him what he needs, and then let him do his job. And then if he screws up, it's on him. But I don't think he will if we give him the tools. But I do agree with Tom. If he doesn't have those tools, you're basically setting him up to fail.
Sticking him in the same system that already failed you, and pretending like it's going to be better. I mean,
Yeah.
it will be better. It's just a matter of can it be good in its the way it's currently constructed.
It'll be more efficient.
One leader, can one person change all that? That's asking the guy to pull a really big load.
Yeah, you're asking him to be a hero at another level, and maybe he is. And I want to say this unequivocally: Paul Saucier is a hero. He's a solid guy, and I get it. There's some things that you maybe you don't like that he did or he didn't do or whatever. He's a Worcester guy who's trying, and I give him credit for trying. And I think that Tom has made it very clear it is so hard to try in this city because of that family secret thing. You got to pull weight, and everybody's on the same team. And this guy is trying to do both, and it's almost impossible to thread the needle. And no one has ever done it here. No one. So, I mean, you got to give him credit for trying.
One thing I need to spend some time on is what are the actual laws around privacy around some of this. There was a lot of not a lot, that's overstating it, but there was some nodding and some eyes being between the chief and the city manager during that meeting, specifically around what he could say about staffing really or personnel related stuff. And they could be dead on the law. It seems really restrictive to me.
Right.
But I don't want to say. I'm not saying they're wrong by any means because I don't know. but I'm going to spend some time with understanding what the laws really are. And, if we're using a standard that far exceeds the law, well, I'm going to have something to say about that. But that, is only if that's true.
And I think we might be able to get it through public records requests through the DA's office, but I think it's a process. Now, the interest, and I think that again, this is a criticism of DA Early, who hasn't been very transparent in some of his decision making for a long time now. But you have a current DA in DA Ryan in Middlesex County, who has made a career of just being transparent and published the list in that county, right? And so now you have a list, and I think, and if I remember it rightly, I don't know where you and I talked about it. I don't know if we talked about it on the show. We probably just talked about it, you and me. But there's a case where I think a couple of chiefs of police sued to stop the release of the list. But the list's release publicly is at the discretion of that DA. And so now I think the Attorney General for Massachusetts could mandate all the lists released. But that'll never happen because Massachusetts is backwards. But some DAs have done it. I think the DA in Berkshire County did it, and the one on the Cape. Now, I don't think I don't know about Plymouth County, and I don't know about I don't know all the counties who did what. But maybe we could talk about that. Maybe we'll do a story where we check out who's released the list and what it is. And it's not to go after those officers. It's just to say, hey, it's important that we know who's telling the truth and who's not.
Yeah, it's one other thing I want to talk about this is at the time that the petition was submitted to council, it was the two leaders of the officers union and the leader of the patrolmen's union. The two leaders of the officers union since have not run again, and that leadership has changed, but they're still on the petition. And this is no criticism against them, because I generally think that people should be able to petition their local government. So this is a part of law that, if they didn't know it, that wouldn't be surprising, right? The law around pattern and practice investigations, which is the investigation that was done here by the Department of Justice into the police department. So they have no reason to know this. So there's no slight against them. People should be allowed to petition. But for city council to table this thing for what ended up being 98 days, 98 days, this thing said on the agenda. We just had a big conversation about purview in October and January. And it really had nothing to do with purview. It had to do with they didn't want to answer the question being asked because they don't like to say things. Especially when they're politically inconvenient, they'll just dodge it. Instead of just speaking your truth and, being transparent about what you think, and people will judge how they judge. And so this petition, it asked for the city to call on the DOJ to release the names of the officers in the report. Now, first of all, that's outside their purview, because they can vote on that 5 million times, and it's not something they can affect. They can vote on it all they want. Their vote doesn't suddenly just manifest the DOJ to do something. So it's outside their purview. Two, the law, which is all of what's, there's obviously a lot of rulemaking and regulation involved in these type of, internal DOJ stuff. But the law that created these investigations is all of like 212 words.
Yeah, it's very short.
It's very short. And it's only got 4 provisions. And the fourth one is the data and information collected under this section, as in part of a pattern and practice investigation, shall be for statistical purposes only and shall not identify victims or law enforcement officers. So it's literally against the law for them to do that.
Yes, they can't release the names.
And 98 days, this sat on the agenda, and it has now been sent to committee to deliberate a petition that is not going to happen, is outside the purview, and is asking for something illegal.
Also,
it's really infuriating. It's really infuriating.
Very, very important. And this is why it's interesting that Public Safety Chair Toomey agreed to have it sent to her committee. And here's why. Because she has taken the position that she cannot do police oversight because she cannot asked the chief of police to do anything, the city manager to do anything related to employees that he employs, right? She's taken that position, which means that this petition is related to employees of the city of Worcester specifically that is managed by the city manager. As we just pointed out, he's in the chain of authority, right? He's the top cop technically. Since that's the case, the public safety chair will be completely contradicting her own position if she decides to forward this back to the city council, because it would be an employment related issue, right? To release those names, to be involved with it, she can't do it. So the fact that she accepted contradicts it, and the fact that it could be forwarded back to the city council again contradicts the entire her statement about police oversight in general. So to be honest with you, this is again nonsense, and you have been very clear and written, and you're not the only person. Brad brought this up, Bill Shaner brought this up, a bunch of people have brought it up, that you cannot release the names legally, but they still keep burying it, and it just blows my mind. I've talked to several city councilors, and I'm like, you do know that this is the law, right? Have you read the law? And to be honest with you, Tom, several of our city councilors have not read the law. They have not, and they will not, and it doesn't matter if you show it to them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you show them the details. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you show them the facts. It doesn't matter. And so that's part of where we live in our society right now. Facts don't matter. We can just say whatever we want, and it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So, and to be honest with you, people don't believe you because they don't like you, right? Or they don't like me, or they don't like whoever.
Yeah.
So
you can not like me all you want. I linked to the law
of course you do.
in my story.
But what I'm saying is that there are people that are watching right now, and you could give them the law and show them the citations, and they will say, nope, because you don't agree with everything that they think, then therefore you're not telling the truth. Even if you give them facts, it doesn't matter, dude. It doesn't matter. So it's just like that, not to go national for a minute, but to go national. We had the Secretary of Defense say that there was no classified information in that signal chat.
Yeah.
Every
weapons packages are highly classified.
Hold on. The F-18 program, the actual plane program, is by statute classified information. So that means anytime any high-level official mentions the F-18, they are mentioning classified information. That is an absolute 100% incontrovertible fact. That was a big part of the F-18 program, was that, it was going to be always classified in the way they were going to handle it. And then there was a big controversy with Boeing and Lockheed Martin and a bunch of weird crap that they were going on. By the way, we got the Doge people looking at that right now, right? He's saying that he's going to chop the money. There was a bunch of hink stuff in the F-18 program. So the fact that the F-18 thing was in the chat made the chat by law, by statute, classified information that we now know because I read the article. I know classified information, and I shouldn't know that. I shouldn't know that they were using F-18s at all. At all. Now, return trips are not classified by statute, right? So when the F-18s go back. But you know what we know now, Tom? Here's what we know that's classified. You know that there are F-18s stationed on a boat somewhere in the Red Sea. You know that. Yep. That's classified, people. That is equipment, that's package delivery, that is military information that we now know. And so the fact that that is known information is proof. So, but if you say this to someone who believes anything that guy says, they'll be like, no. Even though I just told you, F-18s classified immediately. It's over. You can't defeat it. You can't go back with it. There's 1,000 cases related to it, but they will. And then, so in this case, when you provide the law, they're going to ignore that. So if they're going to ignore an F-18, Tom, they're going to ignore you linking to the law. It's just not going to take facts. It doesn't matter. The facts don't matter.
Yeah. And I think the other thing we saw is, the manager has, the city manager has said that, first he said he was going to do a report. Now the Research Bureau is doing it, which is weird in its own right. Not that there's nothing wrong with the research bureau; they do good work. It's just that's outsourcing. It's weird.
Yeah.
But
By the way, they're
nonetheless,
going to come back with a report he's not going to like. I'm
so
telling
see,
you.
that's the thing. It's entanglements. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. A lot of stuff going on, man. A lot of
Yeah, I
stuff.
mean, when you host the state of the city address, and now you're doing a report on something that, by and large, folks in city government are not for, right? At least the council, a majority of the council and him up to this point has not been supportive of citizen review boards, and now you're outsourcing it to the folks that hosted your state of the city address.
Mm.
Not great. It's not great.
Mm. Mm.
It's just not a good look. I mean, I know some people over there at the research bureau. They do good work and they work hard and they're good researchers. I'm not trying to fling mud at them. It's just the optics of it are not good.
Yeah. I mean, that's the unwillingness to do anything that to make sure your house is in order. I guess I mean, there's just so many places where the city just steps on itself, public relations wise, and this is definitely in the same vein as that. So you
Yep.
just wish that we could do some things. It's interesting though. Ask yourself this: why they needed to hire an outside attorney for the response to the DOJ report. A
Oh,
secret
that's
outside attorney. A secret outside attorney
well,
that they did not inform the city council of until they released the statement. So that's all you need to know. That's the kind of thing that goes on over there, and so it is what it is.
yeah. Well, so the other thing I want to bring up on this is it's obvious that some councilors, at least, are gearing up for that fight to make sure that there is no citizen review, and they don't want to do anything else. So those people are clear and present danger to this community because they don't want to change. They literally don't want to change anything. They want to keep it exactly the same. They want to keep the same stuff in place so we can have these nonsense internal investigations. Will they be better with this chief? Yes. Better doesn't necessarily mean good. I don't care what Obama says. Better isn't necessarily good. And I want good.
Well, so speaking of stuff that maybe an empowered citizen review board could review, maybe they could review contracts. Things like, I don't know, Tom, the cable contract between the city of Worcester and Charter Spectrum.
So some stuff happened this week. And then I'll let you are the expert on this, so I'll let you take us through kind of the high points of this. But I believe it was first reported by the old 16, excuse me, the old 16, that because there's a required notification period, I think it's 60 days before layoffs are going to happen if it's over 100 people. They had to notify the state, and the 016 reported that Charter Spectrum is closing its customer service location here, and 170 jobs are going to go away.
That's right.
The people in those jobs do have some opportunity for relocation, and if they don't, if they're not in a job by dead day, there is a severance package. But nonetheless, 170 jobs are going to evaporate from Worcester in June. And this is a company that is in the middle of a contract negotiation with the city for a renewal of a franchise agreement.
That's correct. So let's answer Fred's question. Yes, there's a contract in place. It is not a new contract. The contract has been renewed now multiple times. So in 2013, extended. That's right. In 2013, at the time, City Manager Michael Bryan extended the old contract under the new cable franchise authority that had changed in 2009. And so they changed the law and they made some things that could allow it to happen. We don't have enough time to get into the details of that. But what happened was it was extended by 10 years to 2023. Okay. Then in 2021, right at the tail end of COVID, the Cable Television Advisory Committee, which I was a part of, and eventually I was chair, we took up the process known as ascertainment. Ascertainment is basically a review of whether or not Charter Spectrum has done everything right in their contract and whether we could recommend they should get an extension or not. And so in 2023, because Charter Spectrum had refused to acknowledge the Cable Television Advisory Committee's request for information, the city was forced to extend the contract by a year. Right, so there was in the contract is you can extend the contract by a year 3 times. Okay, so like October 2023 until October 2024. Obviously, we're past October 2024. So, Fred, the answer is we are in the second extension of the renewal contract. Is the best way to put it. Okay, so the city manager is still negotiating with Charter Spectrum through an outside attorney who is trying to get it finished. They cannot extend it past this October. So once they either have to go to court or they have to have a new contract in place by October. I'm not sure the exact date. I'm sure if we really dug into it, it might be like the 15th of October. But that is the situation. Now the call center that was closed was a part of the contract, right? So the contract required 2 customer service points in the physical city of Worcester. Okay. And so the Grafton Street office was one. This was the other. There was one in Webster Square too at some point. I think way back there was another one. But anyways, the place you can turn in your cable boxes or go there and dispute a bill or blah 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 blah, all that stuff. This was one of those things. But the vast majority of the work done at this place, the 170 jobs that Tom was talking about, were call center jobs. Call center jobs. No, they didn't receive a TIF. They're not available for that. And so they eliminated this, and apparently they told the people that day. So a lot of people in a bunch of forums all over Worcester are very upset because they're losing their jobs. And it's a unilateral thing. Not only did they inform the state, Tom, but they informed all the shareholders. Because I'm a shareholder of Charter Spectrum, I have one share. And I got a notification that we're going to save money on the Worcester contract. So the Charter Spectrum used the press release to send out to the shareholders saying that it was a good thing because they're going to reallocate those jobs to some place. I think it's in Indiana. They're moving some jobs to Indiana. And so that's really what they're going to do. But just so you know, a lot of that customer service stuff is being shifted to AI. There's robots handling 99% of that stuff now, and they're going to move that way because they think they're going to save money doing it. And so that's where almost all of those companies are headed towards, is AI generated responses and not humans. And so humans cost money to pay to answer the phone, and they don't want to do that anymore. And so that's where all these companies are going.
And isn't there something in the contract about a live person is supposed to answer the phone within a certain amount of time?
Yes. So in the current contract, a live person is supposed to answer the phone within 30 seconds. And I can tell you that when we did the ascertainment process, we found that Spectrum has never maintained that 30-second response time, ever. And what they do, how they get away with that is if you call in and you hit the 0, they start the timer when you hit the when you start asking for like a person, and then they'll say something like our call volume is higher than normal, and so it's going to take longer. And then they've used that as a way to get through it, and the city never ever held them accountable. And because they never had them accountable, there was no pushback on that until we got into this process. And of course they laughed at us about it. And you can actually go watch a great city cable television advisory meeting back in 2023, I think April of 2023, where you can see the Charter Spectrum representatives basically tell me and the rest of the committee to go F ourselves a bunch of times when we were asking questions. And it was a very well-populated hearing. A lot of people came out and shared their stories of bills janked and all that other stuff and all kinds of terrible things that Spectrum has done. And of course, they just recently put through another price increase. So, frankly, people are pissed off. And I think part of the reason this is happening, Tom, is that Verizon has sped up their installation of the FiOS lines throughout the city. If you've noticed,
Because everywhere they turn service on, they get a rash of calls of people trying to switch.
That's right. So Verizon is just winning at this point, customer after customer. And I think Charter sees what's happening, because Charter doesn't really make a lot of money on the cable thing, because there's not a lot of cable subscribers anymore, because no one wants cable. But they do make a ton of money on the internet, a ton. And so they're losing internet customers to Verizon. And so I think they see the writing on the wall, and they're probably thinking that maybe they're going to pull up and run. It's really strange, though, because if you know anything about the history of Charter Spectrum, they're actually a descendant of Greater Media, which is a locally owned company from Worcester that eventually merged with Charter Spectrum, the national company. So a lot of that infrastructure that was built out in the city of Worcester was built out under an agreement with the city of Worcester and Greater Media back in the 70s. And so a lot of that stuff is just going to kind of be left aside or go obsolete. And how many customers? Well, at the height of Charter Spectrum, which was in the early 2000s, they had about 60,000 cable subscribers, and they are down to around 11,000 right now. So they have lost that many cable subscribers. And so as far as internet subscribers right now, I think it's still around 50 or 60,000, because for most places in the city of Worcester, Charter Spectrum is the number one provider of internet service. That's households, by the way. The number is households, not actual people. And of course, households carry more people than the actual population of Worcester, which is sitting right now at around 220,000 people.
This number keeps going up, and I don't know where people are getting this. How did it go from 207 to 220?
Well, the census said 220.
No, the census, whatever, doesn't matter. It says it's 207. It said 205 in the decennial, and that's the 10-year, and then the estimated update was 207. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. Who cares? They could hold them accountable. Denial is the process to hold them accountable. Then that sets off, this is all regulated by federal law. A denial of, they're entitled to renewal. This is, I think, what a lot of people don't understand. Cable companies are entitled to renewal unless they didn't fulfill their contract.
That's right.
And so denial is saying you didn't fulfill your contract. That then sets off a federal process where the federal government does, what amounts to an audit and to see if they complied. And as the ascertainment report that John was the chair of the committee that wrote it says is, they're scared to death of that process. So they really don't want that.
No one does. No cable company does. And in this environment, they really don't want it, because Brendan Carr is the new chair of the FCC. And nobody wants to go in front of that guy. Nobody, because he has in the past annihilated companies. If you remember, the Springfield situation happened under the last Trump administration. It began under there, and Brendan Carr smashed Comcast in Springfield so badly, made crazy public statements about them, that they eventually kind of conceded to the Springfield mayor when he denied the contract. But that process started under Brendan Carr. And so this guy is now, again, back to being the chair of the FCC. And so he's no fan of cable companies. He's a big proponent of the phone companies. So he was a former AT&T executive and yada, 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 yada. But he's like a Ma Bell, those kind of companies. And those companies don't get along with the cable companies. So you got like a lot of weird stuff happening. But if the city were to execute denial now, Charter would get the worst possible outcome that they could have imagined. That's why when we made our recommendation, we thought it was the perfect time for both Charter and the city manager to negotiate a better deal for the city of Worcester. Because now, once it gets out of the hands of the city, the FCC is going to destroy and just tell everybody what to do. Because again, this is not a local law. It is not a state law. This is a statute statutory federal law that we have no control over once it enters into that process. There's zero control for the city and zero control for charter. So often you would want like a person who understands it. And this guy, Brendan Carr, he just rips contracts apart. And so it's in fact, the only 3 times outside of Springfield that there was denial, this guy was involved with all 3 of those denials, and in every case, a different company took over the contract. So it's very likely that they would just be gone. Now, my personal opinion, and I know people don't want to hear this, but I believe cable is obsolete. And I think the city should try to move out of contracting with the cable company altogether. And they have the legal justification to do so because there's 4 central tenets that allow an ascertainment to show that a company did not adhere to its thing, to their contract. And Charter Spectrum, by all accounts, failed all 4 of those sections. It's not even close. And so it's not like it's just one; it's all. And of course, you just go on any Worcester-based, forum, whether it's Reddit, whether it's Facebook, whether it's anywhere, and just ask, hey, does anybody like Charter Spectrum? And the only person that's going to say yes up until the other day was probably a Charter Spectrum employee. But now that they just fired all those people, that probably goes out the window too. So I doubt very much that they would be a popular thing. But again, many of the city councilors have refused to engage on this issue. Many of them have relatives who work for Charter Spectrum. A lot of questions there about, again, ethical things and who's doing what and who's saying what. And so I hope that the city council, this is a win for any city councilor who decides to take it up. This is an absolute win. Just take up, I'm going to get rid of Charter Spectrum and you'll probably win. You'll probably win. Like, just run on that, right? Just run on that. It is Gino, I appreciate that. Yeah, cable is obsolete. I think that we all know that. None of us, hey, Tom, when was the last time you watched something on cable?
Couldn't tell you.
Yeah. I mean, where is cable anyways now? I mean, no, bars don't even have cable anymore. Bars have moved to everybody's streaming. Everybody's streaming. So, I mean, we need to move past this and move to other things and other ways. You know what I mean? Plus, streaming's starting to consolidate anyways, right? So all the companies are buying each other up. So it's just going to be the same price as cable in the eventually, anyways. It just is what it is. So I mean, we all know that. I watch stuff on my phone now. I mean, in fact, how about this? Let's do a quick poll in the chat. How many of the, well, it looks like there's like 200 plus people watching right now. How many of you are watching on your phone? And how many of you are watching on your computer? Is anybody watching on their TV? I don't think, I doubt it. I doubt it very much. All right, let's do, get that live chat. That'll get Tom excited. I know Tom's super excited about interactive action with the people.
Yeah, I mean, people can participate. That's what it's there for. Nobody jumping on the bit. But I mean, yeah, look, I don't, it's probably too early to get rid of cable. Older folks can't. Like, just imagine, my parents trying to deal with streaming, like, it would be a disaster.
Right.
So I'm not sure that we're there yet. But hold this. I mean, it's like I don't want to say everything. That's too strong, but it's in a lot of cases. You look at things, in like you review things that they've done, the people in the city have done, whether it be the administration, the city council, and not the current of either. Just kind of the history here, and you get when they think people might be able to sue, they act a lot differently.
They do.
And, you're dealing with Charter and they have plenty of lawyers. So, their level of accountability will be adjusted accordingly. And that's just not the way it should be.
And I will say this, I may or may not be aware of a movement for a group of seniors to sue the city over this, over old fees that they were overcharged by Charter. I think they might have a leg to stand on because I think it is the city's responsibility because the city should have enforced the discount. So there's some stuff there. There is at least one lawsuit that is against a bank here in Worcester where a family had been overcharged for a woman who passed away. So she passed away. and she wasn't getting the discount. This is terrible. And the bank, Spectrum was charging her bank account after she passed away, I think like 6 or 7 months. And those fees forced her bank account to go negative, yada, yada, yada. Um, Spectrum was presented with the death certificate and refused to acknowledge it and said the contract is the contract and kept charging. So there's at least that one piece of litigation. I understand that that's an arbitration right now, so I don't know that I can't say anything else other than what I said. Otherwise, the lawyers will get mad at me. But I know there's that going on, and then there's at least one of the groups, disabled folks, who may be also potentially entering litigation against the city in relation to the discount that they did not receive from 2011. So that's like 15 years of discounts. Who knows what that adds up to be? And of course, in this case, because it's a federally mandated contract and it goes under it's not exactly a utility, but it's kind of classified in that way. If it does go to court, then the entities would owe triple damages. That's what happens. So it could be a lot of money. So who knows? Who knows what that's going to be like? But those things might all happen this year, Tom, because obviously October is in the middle of the election season. And so it would be interesting if those lawsuits all hit during that time. And we'll see, can any of the city councilors, other than one or two, say that they've stood up for their constituents over the past 2+ years? I can tell you they haven't, because they didn't while we were, I can tell you that Jenny Paseo did, because she was the one who put the petition on. But now Jenny's gone because you guys didn't treat her nice. And so, there's not a lot of other people that can say that they stood for the seniors and the disabled folks. Do any municipalities have a homegrown cable company? Actually, that's a great question, Gino. The town of Shrewsbury has a municipal broadband a network that they installed, and I think it's like 7 years old now, Tom. I think it's something like that, 7 years old. Super profitable, and is actually one of the largest revenue generators for the town of Shrewsbury. And so major success, literally on our border, which we could model ourselves after. They're not topologically much different than Worcester is. That's the thing, that the argument that the city manager made, that it would be impossible, which Tom called them out on, and then he had to backtrack. That it would be impossible because of the hills, and then that's just not true, because it's happened in towns around. So municipal broadband could be an option for people. I think it's something legitimate to talk about. And so they also have an electric company there as well. I mean, so maybe National Grid should get some competition in Worcester as well. I mean, there's options. It just takes a lot of work, and to do the work to get these things in place, you need a functional city government. And I just don't know that we have a city government that can do that right now without significant and serious reform. So,
well, and it also doesn't have the borrowing power, because we had to build a
yes,
ballpark.
yeah, we have no money.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We have no money, but we have no ability we don't have ability to borrow tons of money now, because it's all, a huge chunk of money is wrapped up now for 30 years. It would be expensive, obviously. Far fewer individual households in Shrewsbury, so it would be far more expensive to build out.
Yeah.
But it's been done before. I mean, even I think it was Chattanooga, Tennessee was the example that the city manager used back there a couple of years ago when he said that. And although in pure investment dollars, yeah, it's upside down. But when they did their assessment of total value brought to their city, it was leaps and bounds over their their investment, because it was a factor in attracting businesses to come to the town, because they had discount rates, blah 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 blah. So although it is in a pure dollar sense, yes. Is it losing money? Yes, in Chattanooga, absolutely. Is the total growth generated more than their investment, according to them, by leaps and bounds? And look, I think that municipalities really need to start looking at, especially, and this is the warning shot, by the way, going on right now with what's going on with the feds, is municipalities need to start providing their own services.
They do.
Because those Fed dollars are going to go away.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, so it's funny. There's some people that are watching right now that I've had some arguments over the last few years about nonprofits and depending on federal grants and all those kind of things. And like, that's how you should develop business in the city of Worcester. And I have argued against that for a couple of years now, because at any moment, the federal dollars can get yanked away. In particular, we were talking about the ARPA money, right? And I said at the time, the ARPA money runs out. There's a limit, and it runs out, and when it runs out, right? And so that money ran out last year, so that, like, it had nothing to do with Trump or not. That money was going to run out. It was statutorily required to end, and so then there's no more ARPA money. They have some that they have in their accounts, and they can pay it out over years. But as far as getting money from the feds, those payments were gone. But you also had on the horizon not just Republicans, but Democrats who had already started to talk about clawing money back, which basically means if a municipality doesn't spend it, the federal government can come back and get it, right? So if you heard, like, one of the more prominent people who talked about that was Chuck Schumer, who's, a national leader of the Democrats. So if that's the case, if you already had people talking about clawing money back, then you cannot base a business model on that. And you certainly can't manage a municipality on money based like that, right? So, I heard Mayor Petty talking about the federal, the stuff with the Department of Education. That money was never how we should have been running our schools. We should have always wanted our schools to be run by locally generated funds and locally generated dollars. Hey, that means that, hey, you're going to have sponsored stuff. You're going to have to slap a Polar Beverages logo on the North High, basketball and football teams, and you're going to have to throw things up on the scoreboard, and you have to do all the work, and that takes work. You need to have a person in the school department that does that work, that goes out and gets local companies to invest. That takes a lot of work to do it. It does. But there are a ton of examples countrywide that have done that successfully and have gotten themselves weaned off of state money and federal money. And that's what we got to do. Now, there's a state budget law related to the education department here in Massachusetts that would be complicated. Yeah, it would. Would take a lot of work to change those laws. But to be honest with you, we should always be wanting to generate our money to run our city locally. It should be about Worcester, and it shouldn't be about whatever some dude in Washington is going to decide tomorrow, right? Because, by the way, just because there's a different person in charge doesn't mean that they won't change their mind either. And we saw that. We see that all the time, right? Why, Tom, why does Jim McGovern get elected all the time? What's the number one factor? He brings money back to the district.
Oh, yeah,
right?
For sure.
He brings money back to the district, right? So what happens when Jim McGovern's no longer there? Maybe that person that replaces him doesn't bring money back to the district. So that changes the way we think about government. If we only think about it in terms of, hey, they go to the feds and they bring us back money, then that means you're accepting whatever policies out there that you don't agree with, right? So get off. We got to wean ourselves off that money anyways. I know it's a hard conversation, but hey, man, times are changing, dude. And so you gotta make rapid decisions. And so at least municipal services have to be thought about as essential to the future of a sustainable Worcester economy. And it can't be just hope the next company replaces us. Because, by the way, Verizon, in other towns, people hate Verizon. So don't think Verizon is like a company that everybody's like, oh, they're the best in the world and all that. Verizon is giving you discounts right now and deals, and they're getting all kinds of stuff in there. But believe me, if they become the dominant single provider of the internet in the city of Worcester, you'll start to not like them too. Believe me, real quick.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And the city gave a quote that it wasn't subject, this closure of all these jobs wasn't subject to anything in the contract. And you're saying that's just not true.
That's just not true. I mean, so the city can say whatever they want, But they need to read again. The city has proven that it doesn't read its own contracts, and has never read the actual license. And I encourage anybody, go on to mass.gov, put cable television license, click City of Worcester. It is available for anybody to read, and go down and read Section 5, and you will see all of the requirements as far as installations, jobs, and things like that. And the city can put out whatever it wants. Again, you cannot be stupid enough not to believe that this is related to the ongoing negotiations. Because think about how dumb that would be of Charter Spectrum. In the middle of a negotiation for the contract that they say, Charter Spectrum says that their most valuable contract in New England is Worcester. That's what they have said. They've said it multiple times in public hearings here in Worcester, and they've said it in their own shareholder disclosures, that it's their most profitable contract in New England. You're telling me, Tom, that in the middle of negotiating that, they're going to just cut 170 jobs in the middle of the most profitable contract? The city makes no sense. And this is, again, I guess this is directly to the city manager. Dude, you should have hired me to run this whole negotiation. Seriously, man, because you just read your own contract, and I'm telling you, the Charter Spectrum is doing this stuff intentionally. And we have plenty of people who worked for Greater Media and worked for Charter as an individual company, and now Charter Spectrum, that have been in the city of Worcester for many, 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 many years. This is how that group does business. They have always done business this way. Sometimes when people tell you who they are, you should believe them. And Charter Spectrum is a company that their feelings about the city of Worcester are very clear. They hate us and do not care about us in any way, shape, or form. They only want our money. They have no care for the people of Worcester. And anybody, city manager or any city councilor who says otherwise, is just telling you exactly who they are. So believe them. Just believe them when they tell you.
And that brings us to John's favorite part of the show.
It is not my favorite part, Tom. That is a lie. J'accuse. This is by far the number one rated section of the show by our thousands and thousands of adoring fans countywide in Worcester, even though one of them is not Stephen Quist. That's too bad. He's missing out on a spectacular show. Steve, at some point, unblock us and come join in on the wonder that is the This Week in Worcester podcast. By the way, if anybody would like to sponsor the This Week in Worcester podcast, you can reach out to Tom or John, and we will happily set you up with anything that you would like to sponsor our podcast. But the best part of the show is Tom's favorite things, and eventually I will get it sponsored by whoever owns the rights to The Sound of Music. That would be a good thing to do for Tom. We should get like a song, but it needs to be like a hard rock version of that song about Tom, right? So instead of raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, it would be something more heavy, because Tom he likes the hard stuff, everybody. All right, so the favorite part is, since we were talking about cable, right? And obviously cable is obsolete. Tom, what is your favorite current streaming program? What is it? What are you streaming out there, Tom?
I don't get in front of the TV to watch stuff too much. In the middle of I'm near the tail end of a Dexter rewatch, and been watching some stand up lately, and that's all on Netflix. So that's at least what I've been using lately.
Yeah. Netflix. People in the chat, throw in your chat the platform of choice. It's only because, I'll be honest with you, the only reason I like it is because it comes free with my Amazon Prime thing. But I've been watching a lot of shows on Prime lately, and I love Reacher. I don't know if anybody's watched it, but that Reacher show is spectacular. Basically, every episode is a movie, and I love it. It's a great show. The dude, it just is a great show. Great, well-written show. I guess except for the fact that they like to have the dude with the shirt off a lot, so that's probably for the ladies to watch the show, or guys that like guys. So I don't want to hold anybody out, anybody who likes whatever they like. So I like that Reacher show, and everybody wants the Reacher guy to be here. See,
Reacher fans piping up.
we're getting our ratings are going up right now because we mentioned Jack Reacher. By the way, I love the Jack Reacher books. If anybody's ever read them, and by the way, Tom Cruise did not do a great job in those movies, and so that's why they ended up going out and get a guy who can play. And so Maria apparently thinks he's hot. And then what I also been watching the Wheel of Time show. I don't know if anybody's seen the Wheel of Time show. I'm catching up with that. And I read those books when I was a kid. And I like those books. It's okay. It's all right. Yeah, it's you know what I mean. But it's free. Comes with my phone, so whatever.
I last night watched the most recent Chris Rock comedy special called what's it called? I forget now. But it's it's not Bigger and Blacker, which I think was his best, but he's just so good. Like, everybody, I mean, I put him in the same tier as Chappelle. Everybody says that Chappelle is kind of the GOAT or the current GOAT. Was there tons of like belly laughs? Like, oh my God, that was crazy. No. But just him taking the way he takes you through stories, the way he repeats himself and just drives his point home. Like he's almost saying some of his setups twice, but it's him and his inflections, just funny. He's just a funny dude. But I absolutely, I'd seen the stuff about the Will Smith stuff, which he does last. That got a lot of attention when it came out, but just the whole thing as a body of work.
Yeah, I'm pro Chris Rock.
I mean, I don't put him on. I kind of agree with the orthodoxy that Carlin and Pryor are a tier to themselves.
Yeah.
And then but second tier is I think Louis, Chris Rock, Chappelle, and then everybody else.
Yeah. No, I would say I generally agree with that. I watched some of the Netflix stuff, some of the comedy specials. There's some comedians that get specials now that just I don't get it. But the like niche.
I think Kreischer's hysterical. He's like the dumbest guy alive. He's hysterical.
There's just some people that I'm like, okay, I don't get it. You know what I mean? But But I think comedy. They do say that we're in the middle of a comedy renaissance. So that's like a thing now. Comedy's coming back because the cancel period is over. So now we're starting to get comics that are saying things again. Although by the way, the whole time there were comics saying things. So I like Bill Burr. Bill Burr can sometimes grate on me. But
I would actually put I can't believe I missed him. I would put Patrice O'Neal in that second tier. Imagine how good Bill Burr is now, which I think he's great. I put him in like the third tier. And Patrice died in 2011.
Yeah.
And he was already just miles ahead of people. Elephant in the Room is like an hour and whatever, a few minutes of absolute brilliance.
Yeah.
At every turn. And then, he obviously passed away. I mean, if the game would be over, it would be him. He would be the GOAT. If he hadn't passed away, then he would be the one because he was the one. But yeah, I put Bill like top of the next tier. I don't think he's he's so New England. How do you not love him up here? But I don't think he's Patrice or Rock or.
I also think all the I'm sure this might be controversial, but the Kill Tony people, the whole crew over there, they're okay. Some of them are funny, but some of them I just like. How much crowd work?
Patterson. Cam Patterson is
funny.
Gold.
Yeah, Cam Patterson. That kid is funny. But I'm just saying that there's some people on that. I don't know, just like some of them are just it's the same old shtick, I just don't know how many of those. Like I used to get critical of black comics who did the, white people do this bad, right?
Mhm.
And then, but at the same time, I don't like white comics who do the same thing, like, but just the
Yeah.
reverse. And so, like the Tony Hinchcliffe is kind of that guy. It's the same thing. Everybody calls him gay, and everybody says he's racist, and it's like, okay, and he's been doing it for 15, 20 years, so I can't like say
Yeah.
he hasn't.
So I mean, the Tom Brady roast, he was, oh my God.
Yeah,
I
he was
mean,
he was yeah,
swings for the
yeah.
fences. If anybody's ever swung for the fences, yeah. I mean, he generally he can grate on me, but as a roast comedian, he's absolute fire.
So I mean,
Absolute
those are,
fire.
I guess those are the this I don't know that what's the girl's name there that also did the blonde girl. She's pretty funny, but she's just all um like shock comedy. The girl
Yeah, and
was,
that's
Nikki whatever, she also
Nikki
hosted the
Glaser.
Golden Globes.
Yeah, yeah. She's
Yeah, yeah.
also an amazing roast comic, though.
Yeah, yeah. So like I saw her. Is your vaping culture podcast coming up?
Listen, I'm down to 6 milligrams, kid. I'm weaning. I'm on the multi-year wean.
Hey, listen, let me say this. Let me say this. Let me say this. He needs this to deal with me. So, I'll give him a pass. Give him a pass to handle John for 2 hours
That
every
just for the
Sunday.
record, folks, that's nicotine.
He also has to read my articles. He has to Jeff Ross. He has to edit me, right? He has to keep me in line. He has to deal with all the people that don't like me. That's a lot of work for Tom Marino. I think personally.
You're light work. If they don't like you, they don't like me either. So I don't think I'm not getting it. Ross is, I mean, his place in roast comedy is, but I wouldn't call him the GOAT. I wouldn't go then, and then there's everyone else.
I'll make my comedic argument too, real quick. Eddie Murphy, right, is both one of the most underrated and most overrated comics of all time, and that's because as far as stand-up is concerned, he just stopped in the middle of his whatever he was going to become, and those two specials that he did back then, they were funny, but they weren't perfect. Like there are Richard Pryor albums that are literally perfect. Like there's no doubt about it. So he gets overrated because of those two albums, and so I would put him in the third tier as well. And then I've told this story a bunch of times, but you remember Gallagher, our the watermelon blasting Gallagher back in the day. So I saw him at the Centrum years ago, towards the end of his thing, when he was really drinking heavy. And I don't know if anybody knows this story, but he did not like being the guy who was known as the watermelon guy.
Yeah.
He was really mad about that. But so like I was like in the second row or something like that, and he just was mad. And so I remember getting splashed with the stuff, and but it was like not that great, you know what I mean? It wasn't as funny as it was. So that's my big comedy special story. Gallagher. I was sitting in the Centrum, so the DCU Center for those kids that are in the chat, if anybody doesn't know.
If you're looking for somebody, I mean, relatively up and coming, kind of big at this point, had something go viral last year at one point, but Troy Bond, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
At crowd work stuff. I like Schultz. I actually watched Schultz's new special last week too. But it's basically the whole thing is really by and large about him and his wife trying to get pregnant, and he was the problem, and so he goes through the whole process of learning that. And it really good. I thought it was really good. Some people don't like him because he, says some right-wing stuff sometimes. I don't really care. He's hysterical on stage. Absolutely hysterical.
So if for a local comic, real quick, Tommy J. Dwyer, that's where he cut his teeth before he started the movie stuff. Tommy's a local comic, and he's pretty funny. You should check out Tommy's shows. He's a crowd work guy too. He does some stuff that's pretty good. So just give a shout out to my buddy there, Tommy J. Dwyer. Go check him out.
Sean asked about Stavros. I was actually just over the weekend was watching. He did Edelman's podcast, and Edelman has a guest on. They pick like their favorite game ever or the best game ever in their mind, and he picked I forget what year it is now, but the year that I think Ray Rice broke like the first run against the Patriots. I think it was in the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
And Ray Rice, I think, broke like the second play for
Yeah. I remember that game.
gone, and they ended up killing the Patriots. So that's what he picked. And Edelman was hurt for the game, so it was really funny. It was really good. Yeah, Stavi's good. Stavi's good with the crowd work too. But like they talked for a long time before they actually watched clips of the game in that, and he just Stavi's from Baltimore. He's a big Ravens fan, and went through in meticulous detail all of the ways that he hates the Patriots to Edelman. It was fantastic.
That's good. Norm Macdonald, the late great Norm Macdonald, too. In stand up, impeccable comic. Great guy, Norm Macdonald. People didn't understand his jokes. I thought his running joke of being a deeply closeted gay man on every talk show was one of the greatest troll jobs in the history of the world. But if you ever just want to crack up for 7 minutes straight, go watch the Larry King interview, Norm Macdonald, and he just destroys Larry King, and Larry King does not know what's happening. He clearly and distinctly has no idea what's going on. And then you look up that one, and then you look up Conan O'Brien like 2 nights after that, because he goes on and explains to Conan O'Brien. It's just really good stuff. Norm Macdonald trolling the media for 25 years.
What always I traveled an hour to work forever years ago, in like early 2000s, and every time I think of Norm, he had so many good stand-up bits and like so many awkward. Like he would make the room so awkward, and would just love it. So he was on Stern a million years ago, and Stern asked him something about bomb, and he was like, "Well, I mean, people pay to see me, and I don't try to bomb, but when I do bomb, I think it's kind of funny." And it was like, he's saying like, I'm there to make people laugh, and if I don't make people laugh, isn't that funny? And it's what I always think about with him. I just never forgot that.
That's great. So it's not to go SNL, because SNL is sometimes boring, but him hosting SNL a year after getting fired from SNL and then roasting Lorne Michaels from the stage is maybe one of my favorite ever SNL moments. And it's the only thing that Lorne Michaels has ever admitted, really, which is great, because Lorne Michaels almost never gives an interview, but he gave that after Norm passed away. He said he had to admit, Norm got me that day. So that was always a really good one. Norm Macdonald, man. Everybody go watch. If you're too young and you don't know Norm Macdonald, go back and watch all that stuff. So that's
YouTube
Tom's
is great for
things.
comedy stuff.
We got your favorite streamer, and then you got some comic stuff out of you. So now I have to come up with a new topic next week. There's so much pressure on me to deliver this section every week.
How about see, I separate the things. Like when I if I'm building the tiers list or the Mount Rushmore, that's one thing, but my favorite comic was not mentioned, so you can use that.
Oh, we got
hands
save that.
Down. No, I mean, we're already doing it. Hands down, my favorite comic of all time, Lewis Black.
Lewis Black, very funny.
That's the show I do. I could never do it. He did all my jokes.
The shaky hands.
Well, I mean, he's just pissed off, and that would be my gimmick.
That's why it's so good. He's like really mad
about everything. I love it. He just, I think he's done. I think the tour is over. But said it was, he's 70 something now. He didn't hit till he was much older. I don't think he really got big until he was like in his 50s.
He was way older when he finally got big.
Yeah. So I think he's done touring now, but he still does. He's got a great YouTube channel.
Right.
So I believe, unless you have anything else, we did 20 minutes on comedy.
That was a good end. I have nothing left. I don't have any jokes to tell.
Me neither. We'll leave that to comedians. We will try to screw it up less next week. Until then, thank you. We do this every Sunday at 8:30. Feel free to jump in the chat anytime, in the comments at any time, and we will attempt to respond. Unless you're saying some nonsense, then we'll ignore you. Until next week, thank you, John. See you all then. Have a great week.
Come to City Council on Tuesday. Come see us.
This week it was out.